Welcome, everyone. I'm Erin Christensen, and I manage Apprenti for Kansas City Tech Council, for the KC Tech Council. And we're so excited to have all of you here to learn more about not only tech apprenticeships in Kansas City, but that's obviously what we'll be focusing on mostly, but also learning about the tech industry in Kansas City and what the KC Tech Council is. So real quick, like I said, we're going to jump into what the Tech Council is. I actually work for the Tech Council, not for Apprenti, and I'll talk about what that relationship looks like. Just give a quick overview of what the tech industry is in Kansas City and the growth that we've experienced over the last few years, and then the Apprenti process and timeline. And we will leave it open. We will leave plenty of time open at the end for Q&A. So please utilize the Q&A feature along with chat to ask questions, and we'll address all of them at the end. So real quick, the KC Tech Council is really built upon three different pillars to support the tech industry in Kansas City. The first being workforce development, which is where Apprenti falls into, and building up a larger tech pipeline for the tech industry. Industry access, and so being able to connect different professionals within the tech industry, provide professional development opportunities, networking opportunities, et cetera. And then policy advocacy. So we work on the local level, such as the city to county, and then states for both Kansas and Missouri, and then the federal level to advocate for the tech industry. And so different legislation that is being proposed that would affect the tech industry, we try to be involved with, along with initiatives for STEM education, specifically within K through 12. So the KC Tech Council is comprised of about 170 member organizations. We're a member-driven organization, and it is comprised across pretty much all different industries. So you don't necessarily need to be a tech company to be involved with the Tech Council. So we have financial services, banking, insurance, healthcare, all represented within the Tech Council. So tech in Kansas City, just like anywhere else in the US, but I think Kansas City is in a really great position, but the tech industry is booming in Kansas City. I'm not going to go over all of these different stats, but I wanted to share them with you. Please note that these are pulled from 2019. We're still waiting on 2020 data, and that might be affected a little bit because of COVID, but still pretty consistent with what we're seeing on a national scale. A few things that I did want to point out is that we have over 4,000 companies in Kansas City that are considered tech companies. And I think when you think of Kansas City and what tech companies we have, you think of Garmin or Cerner, or even a portion of H&R Block with their software as a tech company. But we have, a wide range of size and the kinds of business that they provide that are considered tech companies. We also, I know in 2020, we had about 29,000 jobs that were posted that year. And those are tech jobs that are posted, but they aren't necessarily just within the tech companies. They are represented across different industries. So as you know, and actually most of them aren't in tech companies, they're in other industries like healthcare or insurance or financial services, banking, et cetera. So we're seeing a huge boom and it continues to increase every year within the tech community in Kansas City and what our workforce needs are. So how Apprenti works with the KC Tech Council, for those I know, I assume most of you are somewhat familiar with Apprenti, but how it works is Apprenti is a national program, and I'll dive into it in a little bit. But it's been so successful in other markets that as the Tech Council looks at how we can support our workforce needs, it really stood out as providing a good foundation for developing a tech apprenticeship program in Kansas City. So we're utilizing the Apprenti framework to put into place in Kansas City to develop a tech apprenticeship program. So Apprenti first started in Seattle, and it was first implemented with Microsoft and Amazon. And then it's about 5 years old is when it first started, and it quickly, spread throughout the country into other markets. Kansas City is its 17th market that it's been implemented in. And, as I talked about briefly about Kansas City, we're seeing, the same problem on a national scale in terms of there's an increase in IT job postings, but companies just continue to look in the same place for talent. So we need to be more innovative with how we find and develop talent to enter the tech space. And that's where Apprenti comes into place. So as I mentioned, it's a national organization for developing tech talent, and it's been a well-proven model across different industries and across the country. I think something important to note is the tech apprenticeship model isn't a new model. It's new for the United States, relatively new for the United States, but it's been well received and well implemented for the past couple of decades in Europe. And so where the US is just a little bit behind in terms of adapting a tech apprenticeship model. And that's where Apprenti comes into play, and working with companies to figure out how this can be implemented within their organizations as they plan to expand their workforce. The goal is obviously to grow the talent pipeline, but also diversify that pipeline as well. Apprenti, and I'll dive into this in a little bit, but Apprenti developed proprietary candidate screening tools, and one of them being an assessment that candidates need to take. So if you have not already taken it, I'll be talking a little bit more about what that looks like later on in the presentation. We have an incredibly high retention rate from apprentice to being hired into a full-time permanent position with an organization, and it's at a reduced cost for hire. So Apprenti really is leading, it has become a leader in developing more non-traditional talent for tech roles. Oftentimes I get asked, what's the difference between an apprenticeship versus an internship? And there's a lot of differences. I hear that from both the candidates and then also employers. First, I think the biggest difference is that an apprenticeship is pretty well regulated through different standards for the Department of Labor and then also on the state level. It's a 12-month structured on-the-job training program upon completion of your technical or classroom training. It's registered, like I said, either with the Department of Labor and or the state that it's being operated in. So for Kansas City being a border city, we're working with both Missouri and Kansas to have our apprenticeships registered. And like I said, it's regulated. So there's a lot of oversight, external oversight from both Apprenti and state and federal agencies to make sure that our apprentices are getting the experience that they need to be successful in that field. You will get paid and you will receive benefits as well. So depending on what you study in college, internships are usually attached to a 4-year degree. Depending on what you study, unfortunately, you don't always get paid. And if you do, it's either at a stipend or an hourly rate. For an apprenticeship, you will get paid, and it's typically about a 30 to 40% reduction of that position, that average market value for that position. So if a company was hiring like a software developer and they typically bring them in at 70,000, for example, an apprentice would make about 60% of that. And then, like I said, you do qualify for a full benefits package that any other employee would get with that organization. And there is education attached to the apprenticeship. So what the process looks like for both an employer and a candidate is that when we decided to launch Apprenti, to bring it into Kansas City, we first really looked at what employers could most benefit from this. And I'll talk about the employer relationships that we're building up right now, or that we've built up, that have committed to hiring apprentices. And then we start looking at various training providers as well. So in Kansas City, specifically, KU Edwards, Snap IT Solutions, Centric Training, in Johnson County Community College, they are all able to provide the training required for the different apprenticeships that we'd be able to offer in Kansas City. We then go through and look at the candidates that have applied and have taken the assessment, and we screen. So you're screened by both myself and a member of the Apprenti team, and then you're screened by the employer. The employer has the final say in who they ultimately want to hire and bring into their organization. If you have not received any type of technical training, you would then go into your technical training before doing your on-the-job training. And so that's when you would start your year-long on-the-job training with an employer. We manage all of the compliance associated with the apprenticeship, so that really doesn't fall on you or the employer. And then we continue to support apprentices and employers. The ultimate goal for both, I know, apprentices and for employers is that a full-time, permanent job offer would be made from that company. When I'm talking to companies about the apprenticeship model, I make that very clear. They're desperate for talent, and so they see this as an opportunity to build up that pipeline into those full-time permanent positions as well. So this talks to just a little bit about, or this looks a little bit about how this is just a more, I guess, non-traditional way of getting into a tech career. So when you compare it to getting like a 2-year degree at a community college, or a 4-year degree at a college, or at like a 4-year institution, college or university, a registered apprenticeship takes about 14 to 17 months to complete. And that is the technical and classroom training combined with the on-the-job training. We try to keep the technical training as low cost and free, or free to the apprentice as possible. Our employers agree to pay for your training costs. We also are looking at, or we will refer different candidates to various grant opportunities through the Department of Labor, or on a local level as well, to help subsidize the cost of training. So like I said, I talked a little bit about what this timeline looks like, but this is just an overview of what it takes to go from an applicant to being an apprentice. So you first hear about the program, you look at the assessment, and you register for it. There are prep materials online that I'll talk about in a little bit to help you get prepped up for the assessment. And then you need to receive at least an 80% or higher to be considered for selection. Then you'll go through a phone interview with us, and so everything is virtual right now. So you'll do a phone interview, a Zoom interview, and then you'll do your final employer interview. And depending on the occupation that you've selected and that you were hired into, your technical training can take anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 months, depending on the provider. And then you do a year-long paid on-the-job apprenticeship. So the requirements are that you must be legally eligible to work in the United States, that you're 18 years or older, and that you complete the technical training and the 1 year on the job training. And that's it. A lot of people ask, are there educational requirements? Just a high school diploma. That's the only educational requirement. You don't need any type of technical background to get into Apprenti. And to be honest, oftentimes we see some of our more successful candidates come from a very non-traditional work background, nursing, teachers, social workers. So there's really, outside of these requirements, there really isn't anything else that you would need to do to be considered for a tech apprenticeship. So what the assessment looks like, there are 3 different sections. Math is the heaviest one. And I will say that for math, it really evaluates, it's based off of a 10th grade math level. So if you've been out of school for a while, or if it's been a while since you've taken a math class, that would be an area that I would suggest that you try and brush your skills up on a little bit more. And then logic and critical thinking, and then your soft skills. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete, but you can take it in sections. You just have to complete a section. So if you want to do a math section one day and then wait a couple of days and do your logic and critical thinking, and then finish it out with your soft skills, you certainly can. You just need to take the entire thing within 10 days of starting it. You can also take it up to 3 different times, but you do have to wait 3 months between each time to take it. So these are just some considerations. There's no cost to you. There's no cost if you have not taken the assessment or applied. There's no cost to you to be an apprentice. We have made the commitment in Kansas City that there would be no cost in terms of training for our apprentices. Our employers fully know that whatever is left over in terms of cost of training, that they would help subsidize the cost for. There are salaries and benefits once you start the on the job portion. So once if you need to go through technical training, you don't get paid for that. So keep that in mind. So you must be able to support yourself during that training period. Some companies may offer a stipend. This is not a requirement, but some may offer a stipend, and some might offer moving expenses as well. I was just talking with a company and they asked if that was a requirement. And I said, no, if they have a candidate that was coming from another market. And they said, oh, well, we would probably pay it anyway, like we would pay any other employee. So if you are from another market and you're open to relocating to Kansas City, that's definitely an option. And that's something that I could walk you through if you are selected by a company. Typically, technical training is full-time. It's about 40 hours a week. You're not physically sitting in a classroom or sitting in front of a computer screen for 40 hours a week, but we do tell apprentices to plan on about 40 hours a week of time being committed to or dedicated to lab time, lecture, group projects, etc. And if you have children, I would make sure that you have access to childcare and transportation. I will say the silver lining of COVID is that everything has gone virtual in terms of training. I think education or training providers and educational institutions have become so accustomed to providing or delivering their coursework in a virtual way and it's really opened up access for other people to go through a training program that may not have been able to in the past, that I don't see that piece of it going away, even when things start opening up to be in person more in the next year or so. And then for companies, some of the companies are doing their apprenticeships in a virtual, fully virtual, and some are in person. It just depends on the nature of their work and really how they've continued to operate since COVID. So just keep that in mind as well. If you aren't from Kansas City and you're interested in working for a Kansas City-based company, but you don't have the ability to relocate, there might be an opportunity for you to stay where you are, at least temporarily, before relocating to Kansas City. So when you register, you can select up to 3 different geographical areas. Because Apprenti is a national program, you can select, obviously we want you to select Kansas City, but you can select Kansas City and then 2 other markets as well. And you can select multiple job positions. I do want to note that and I'll talk a little bit about the different occupational roles that we provide through Apprenti, but be mindful of how many positions that you select. Companies do get a little wary of a candidate who has selected all of the occupational roles, and understandably, I know why someone would want to do that. It's because you want to cast a wide net and not limit your opportunities, but there is a vast difference between what you would do as a software developer versus what you would do in technical sales. So keep that in mind and just be really intentional with the different types of roles that you would be selecting or be interested in. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do more than one. I just wouldn't select all 14 of them if I were you, and just do a little bit of research on what those different positions are. If you're someone who wants to be, sitting at a computer screen all day and building apps and doing software development work, that's we have certain positions for that. But if you're someone who's more interested in consulting and sales, like technical sales, that's more people driven. And so if you're wanting that interaction with people, then I would focus on those types of careers as well. Also, once you register, you'll have access to our prep materials for the online assessment. I would just at least take a look at them to see if they would be of use to you as you prepare for the assessment before diving right into it. And there are some practice exams that you can take as well, so you have an idea of what the full assessment looks like. So these are the different occupations and trainings, and this list continues to grow. So as you can see, we have anywhere from IT business analysts to technical sales, software developers, etc. What we're finding in Kansas City for apprenticeships, and this came as no surprise to me, or really, it's very consistent with what we see on a national scale, is that our needs fall more on IT support, software developers, and then cybersecurity analysts. That's not to say that that won't grow as Apprenti grows its presence in Kansas City, but that's what we're finding currently. I've had conversations with some companies who are interested in possible technician apprenticeships and then also technical sales. So those could be coming down the pipeline in the future, but currently what our biggest need is for software developers, cybersecurity analysts, and IT support. So I wanted to just kind of showcase a few of our different apprentices, and these were actually out of Seattle. They all work for Microsoft, but I more so wanted to take or for you to note, their backgrounds. So Sarah used to be a pharmacist, and so she went through and became a software developer for Microsoft. a LEM study he was doing, and he was an Uber driver before he went through the apprentice program, and he had a background in conflict resolution and now is a software developer. And then Maki, she didn't have a college degree, and now she's a software developer. So it really, the backgrounds of individuals who come through apprentice very much differ, and that's what we love about it, is that it's really, again, exposing individuals to a career in tech that they probably hadn't considered before, and again, building that pipeline of talent for different companies. So oftentimes we get asked what the demographics are for apprentices. The median age for apprentices is 33. So, but you can see that the age range is anywhere from 18 to 63. I think 33 is the median because we do have such an emphasis on recruiting veterans into the program. And that's around the age where veterans would typically exit the military. But just over half of them have a 4-year degree. About 88% are retained after apprenticeship. So that's really high, especially if you compare that to like an internship program that a company has. And the median salary for apprenticeship, now this is at a national level, so it's skewed a little bit by markets such as Boston and Seattle, but the median salary is $57,000. So it starts with, I know several of you have applied and have taken the assessment already, but make sure to take the assessment if you haven't done so. Check out the prep materials, research the different careers, like I mentioned, and try to do some networking in Kansas City if you aren't from here, and really try to get a lay of the land of what opportunities exist within Kansas City. So these are the different learning resources that we have as well. And these are all through the Apprentice portal. So once you apply, you would have access to these. A few of our employers, both at a national level and locally. So here in Kansas City, we've solidified partnerships with Burns & McDonnell. They are a large engineering consulting group. Certec, they do engineering consulting as well, just on a smaller scale. And Bar Advisory, they do IT consulting. And we're very close to solidifying some more key employer partnerships that we'll be excited to announce in the next probably week or so. But as you can see, some of the other companies that are listed, like I said, they're very representative of all industries. So we have financial services, we have retail, consumer packaged goods, Microsoft. So that's obviously in the tech space, healthcare. So it's not just for large tech companies. And what we're finding is that companies who don't necessarily have the name recognition are the ones that are most excited about this, because they still have that need for talent, and they're excited to bring quality, high performing talent into their organizations.